Right, welcome to the Conscious Experience. My name is Boris, and here today on this show, we're going to be talking about conflict in relationship. So, Mike, man, how are you? It's so good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing great as usual. Let's dive into this. I'm feeling a little bit of resonance with this conflict thing, but mostly from the point of view of and dating and conversational conflict. Not so probably not as deep as a long-term relationship. So let's see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's start like we always start by maybe defining some terms. So what is a conflict in your point of view?
Yeah, this is really, really good. I would say that let's say like the old model, what is conflict? Conflict is basically like disagreement, something bad is happening. There's not enough something, not enough love, not enough understanding, not enough. And this can be on multiple points of view. We could both feel that way, or maybe one person might feel that way. So this is, I think, like that traditional sense of conflict that we grew up with. And this kind of way of looking at conflict, we always want to avoid it. Right? It's like we don't want to have it. Maybe not necessarily avoid it. Some of us may be like, no, we're not. I'm not going to avoid conflict. I want to face it. But it's not something that we want to have. It feels like something has gone wrong versus that something great is happening. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard recently like conflicts are kind of like icebergs where it's like it doesn't really matter what the conflict is. It's really like what's underneath it, that huge chunk of places that we have to dive deep and kind of uncover. And I also heard that it's like it's conflict is hard for all of us because it means that something has to change, right? And that change could be like just a thought or a belief or something that we have to let go of. So yeah. So now that we've defined conflict, what do you think are the most common forms of relationship conflict? Like, what are some topics? I can think of like finances, maybe like
Yeah.
children if you have children.
Yeah, how to raise children, what we're doing with our finances, what we're doing with our time. Sometimes it's like, what are we having for dinner, right?
Yeah.
And the conflict can start there. So I want to actually just expand a little bit on what conflict is, because we kind of only looked at the traditional sense of looking at conflict. But conflict is not a sign that something is bad is happening. In this newer paradigm, in a more evolutionary paradigm, conflict is a sign that you are waking up. The conflict is a sign that your old paradigm is too small now to hold you, is not compatible anymore, not applicable anymore. And it's like the the emotional guidance system kind of kicks in and you're like, this is wrong, something is wrong, but not the conflict. What is wrong is in essence that we are trying to remain the same, but something within us, maybe we could say the life itself, or maybe our soul, something saying, oh no, it's time to go beyond. This is now, it's almost like we are this like little chick inside of the egg, and the egg is getting too small. It's now not comfortable, and it's time for us to break free. So if we kind of redefine this idea of conflict as like, wow, I am evolving. I am now just in a moment of evolution, in a moment of awakening, in a moment of expanding into something. And if we could have a little bit of that consciousness together, and this applies not only to like our intimate relationships or in dating, but it applies to friendships, applies to navigating, where I just came from a car wash, paid him like $80, and the car was dirty, literally, like even the spots that I just wanted to wash. So like navigating that, what does that really mean? And what it means is that there is a new level of consciousness emerging, a new possibility in which that which you don't want doesn't exist. It literally is no longer there because you're moving to a different temperature. Just like ice does not exist at a temperature where where it turns into water. You can't find ice there. But what's happening is we're just going to a different level of consciousness, a different experience, a different self, almost, we might say.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess that helps answer a little bit of why do we have conflicts in relationships. So you were mentioning maybe on one level, like at a very surface level, we can see it as an opportunity for us to grow and discover what our deep-seated beliefs are that maybe are causing agitation in our experience.
Mm.
And then maybe like on another like deeper level, I know I always bring it back to the tantric philosophies where it's like God or yourself has now separated himself into the other, so that not for conflict necessarily, but so that he can see beauty in the other. So oftentimes conflict just means and somebody else's point of view is inflicting with your deep-seated internal point of view. And so we really have to see that this is like the game that we were dropped into for the point of seeing the beauty of the other person's point of view. And I think that's something that we miss, especially in longer term relationships where like it's easy to resolve conflict when you first start dating. But as things go on, it's we start to forget that we're actually different people still, and we're not the same. So that's probably why we don't like conflict in longer term relationships, because it feels like you should have the same viewpoint as me.
Yeah, but that's not actually what we want, though, right? It's really funny. It's like on one side we do want that, but imagine that they're just like, okay, yeah, your point of view is the right one. At a certain point, like we will lose it loses its edge. It's not like you don't want somebody who's just going to be yes to you if it's not real for them. And it's impossible for all of your perspectives to be real for them, because again, we're living in this matrix where every one of our impressions throughout our life shapes our perspective, shapes the way that we view that situation. And so like conflict arises primarily because we don't know what to do with that moment. Like if we really break this down, conflict is not a resourceful state. It's not like a state where you are plugged into your higher thinking, your higher consciousness, even just basic, like, human tenets of like, kindness and respect and things like this. What really is happening is we're almost like in a psychedelic state, because in that moment of conflict, the sense of you as like a whole person, like everything that you are aware of is available to you, it goes away. And in my experience and kind of understanding of it, we almost regress. We regress to a certain point in our earlier life. Could be our childhood, could be even like pre-verbal times, could be even in womb times. It is like, I don't know. And maybe it's like also, of course, from past lives, but I don't have my own direct experience of past lives, so I can't really speak on that. So it's like all of a sudden here I am, and then and now I am this like 4-year-old, 5-year-old, don't know what year old. I may not even have the words to really be able to articulate what's happening. All I know is like something's not okay. And so it's like our whole way of approaching this can be very different if we can start to understand, like, wow, like this person or myself, like I am going through like basically like a healing crisis. I'm going through an opportunity in which I can awaken and embrace and integrate those parts of me that are now running the show. And clearly they're running the show very unresourcefully, because, it's just basically about blame. And it's like, why, the thing that's happening, I think, like on a very real time basis is like, we don't feel good, right? This is like, what is the actual experience? Unpleasant feeling is arising. We want to get rid of it. We don't want to say, I am making myself feel this way, because that's not even a part of that. You will never find I don't know, maybe these days you will, but like a very young person, maybe like a toddler or a baby, which is going to say, you know what, it's my responsibility that I'm making myself feel this way. You are not responsible. It doesn't come. And so in that state, we're also in this space of like, doesn't feel good. It's you. It's because you said this, or because you looked at me like that, or your tone of voice, or because you believe in this thing. But again, like what is truly happening is just an unpleasant feeling. If we really break it down, that unpleasant feeling is generated by our perspective, right? Is generated by the way that we're viewing that moment.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things. One word you used was inauthenticity, and I just want to share an analogy I heard, or an example I heard recently, which was so, for example, we're in a relationship. I want you to say a certain thing, but it wouldn't be right if you were to say that thing and you were inauthentic. So this example that I heard was anytime that we're not expressing ourselves fully and truly, there's like a computer that our brain is like a mechanism that can sense and detect discomfort, basically. So this example was basically a man takes a woman on a date, right? And he wants to like make her feel good or whatever. And then he has some gas from the meal or whatever, and he's like holding it in. And that kind of like, it's a hilarious analogy, but that kind of inauthenticity to kind of let it go, let that gas go or whatever it is he needs to express himself. The woman kind of sees it in his face. Again, it can detect like inauthenticity and like when you're holding something back. And then she creates a story in her mind that says, oh my God, this and this and this. And so that can create conflict as well. So something so like unapparent, just not being your authentic self. And I think we want our partners to express their authentic selves, yet we only want to hear what we want to hear, right? So
yeah, it's really like I think as humanity are going through a redefinition of like relationship and what we're really doing together, because like up until now, I don't think, or up until let's say recently, like when people are in a relationship, they're primarily in there to get something, right? Like if we think about what am I going in the relationship for? Well, I want, it could be companionship, it could be money, it could be, just help. Like, hey, I want to do this together. Life is hard, emotional support, whatever. But this whole sense of like, I'm going in here to get something. But if we really take a look at what that means, like this transactional relationship, you will never want to get something if it costs you more than the value you ascribe to the thing, right? Like you never want to like go and buy a pack of gum for like, $100 if it's like, you can get that pack of gum for less. So that doesn't work. So if we really understand what happens, we are in it in such a way that we think we're getting the better end of the deal. This is this like little secret kind of like ego thing. And each partner is in their position thinking, oh, I'm going to get the better end of the deal. I'm going to get, I'll have to give up less and I will get more. And then I think conflict is part of that emergence. It's like, oh, but I'm not getting the value that I thought I would get. And now it's unfair. And now I think my whole thing here is sacrifice. Now I think like I put up more and, and this deeply transactional dynamic, which has not got anything to do with love. It's just got to do with survival. It's really a much, much earlier stage of, hierarchy of needs is a place where the conflict simply means that something is wrong and I need to go find another one where I am going to get the better end of the deal. Here, this is too much. I don't want to deal with this, etc. But what we're talking about here, really, this idea of evolutionary life, evolutionary relationship, like what is actually happening, because there is something happening. I think if, we look back, you and I, to our previous relationships, Mike, it's like we could see that the relationship somehow grew us. Like there was something, some kind of like, sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes not so obvious, but there is some kind of like space where we're growing together. If this is injected into the actual conscious context of the relationship, like, hey, we are here to grow together, that means that, what does that really mean in a relationship? It means we're going to trigger each other. It means that we're going to feel there's all kinds of imbalances. We're going to be challenged in the places where we feel the least resourced. Are you up for that? Great. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, this leads to my question for you is, I don't know, like maybe you can't remember to when, because you've been in the relationship for about 7 years, right? So I don't know if you can remember to when you first started dating your partner, or even now, like if you are in a conflict, what are some signs that tell you that your partner can handle conflict well? Is there anything that stands out to you?
This is a very interesting question. It's almost, and let's explore the question for a second. It almost seems like it's leading into the space that like the partner's ability to handle conflict is like determinant in some way. Is like, I need a partner. I want to speak again to my experience here. I need a partner who will do X, Y, and Z if we're in conflict. She will do like this. She will acknowledge this. She will take responsibility. That to me is just another application of the ego of saying, oh, here's the deal that I want, and if I get this, then I'm going to be okay. So there are probably, like, are there signs that the person can handle conflict? Well, it's only in the midst of conflict that you see that. Like, and the other thing that I've noticed is that it's a product of maturity. It's like we, and what is maturity? Like, in my experience, maturity is actually, I hate to say it, it's suffering. It's like it's going through this experience, getting burnt, and it's like, this is why I think we've talked about this before, Mike, is like some of the most like powerfully kind, like radiating people that are like deeply understanding are the ones that have suffered the tremendously most. So, so I want to kind of bring this back to say, like, it doesn't matter how well your partner can handle conflict, because what is conflict at its core is a program in you. It's like an expectation. This is what I found like very recently. It's like the moment that I have an expectation about my partner, like I'm just like, she should be like this. That is the exact soft spot where your partner is going to hit you. They must hit you here, because this is the weak link, because you're saying, I can't hold it. I can't hold this, because if you are like this, but but the thing is that is a weak link in you. It's not like you're basically trying to outsource it, and you're trying to say, okay, well, this place where I can't handle it, you handle it. And that way it will make it all the worthwhile for me to be with you. But the whole beautiful game of the relationship is that this is the exact place where you're going to be challenged. Because what we're doing in essence for each other in relationship is we are almost like poking all of the places in which we forgot how to love, we may say like this, or in which, like, if we look there, we don't feel love, we feel shame, we feel loss, we feel inability, we feel etc. So, I would rather even say, like, what is a good sign that your partner will trigger you, will handle conflict in a way that you don't like, or you don't, expect, sort of thing. Because if we are interested in the kind of relationship that we've talked about before in this context, which is this evolutionary relationship that is devoted to realizing God, realizing our freedom, realizing the truth of who we are, you want somebody who's not going to be complacent and scared to poke you in the exact places where you feel like you cannot ever poke me here.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yep. So you had mentioned that yeah, I like your viewpoint in saying that it's more so about yourself, and you don't know what the conflicts are going to be. I just want to share something that maybe it's a little bit more surface level. When I've been going on like dates and stuff like that, or just meeting people, what some signs that I can see that would tell me that this person knows how to be in conflict and also resolve conflict maybe a little bit faster. So one is that they have, I guess I call it bipolar viewpoints, meaning that they're able to hold two views at the same time and have empathy for both points of view, even though in the conversation they may be representing one point of view, because that's how we have conversations. We have to take a side, but their ability to understand on multiple aspects of life when you have a conversation, can they hold 2 points of view at the same time? The second thing is, do they resolve the conflict quickly? Meaning that they can understand and empathize with, again, your point of view. Some people, again, hold on to conflict a little bit longer. I think personally a good sign in a relationship is if you can resolve the conflict faster. Obviously, we don't want to be sitting and focusing on any form of conflict, because when we zoom out to the larger picture of life, it really doesn't matter. So I think resolving conflict fast is a good sign. Another one I wrote down was kind of like not having sarcasm when they agree with your points, because this can be a common thing. It's like, oh yeah, I agree with your point, but you can tell there's a little bit of sarcasm. No, you want to see like a genuine like understanding or empathy, maybe like a pause and understanding of your point of view. And you can kind of tell that if you're any sort of human. And then the last one I wrote was both people have a genuine excitement to actually find out where they're wrong. So they actually like to be proven wrong. I think it's a cool perspective as well. So
I
yeah.
love it. I love what you're sharing because, like, yeah, I never really think that way anymore. But it's like the reason I don't think that way anymore is because it created a tremendous amount of pain for me to put that expectation on my partners.
Boris,
Um,
you're completely frozen now. Oh, there you go. You're back. Okay. Go ahead.
man,
I heard you, but go your video
you
was
heard me.
frozen.
Okay, good. So I think that that's
You're
so
still
beautiful.
frozen. You're just frozen. Yeah, we're just gonna get audio.
Dang it, man. That's awesome, brother. Like, I want to just share those qualities, to have those qualities in your partner is a tremendous gift. And if they can give you that gift, awesome. I found that it actually created more pain and more disconnect in my relationship to try to insist on them or like really feel like, oh, this is something that has to be here in order for us to be able to earn or for me to feel okay. And so instead I really focus much more on like myself and how can I maybe bring those qualities. And I'm actually not that masterful at bringing those specific qualities of like really going deep and like trying to understand, when to me instantly, for example, it could be obvious that, oh, that's just like a confused thought. That's not really a clear way of thinking about it. Let me help you. That is not is not something that is like resourceful or building in relationship.
Nice. I think that leads to the main point of this video, which is how do we resolve conflict? Um, I have a couple things listed, but see if it sparks anything. So one is not to make assumptions about what the other person is thinking. I think another one is listen more than you talk. I think that's an easy way to resolve a conflict.
Yeah.
And then yeah, giving it time and space. Actually, knowing when to walk away is an interesting one too, because sometimes we just need that space, and each person has a different threshold for sitting in the fire. And I think it's good to communicate like, okay, I need to take time to breathe and reflect on this. So
Yeah. So are we looking at this from the point of view of one person navigating it, or something that both people need to do to resolve the conflict?
let's do both, people.
Yeah. When it's both people, I'm really a little bit at a loss because we never have control over the other person, and they really have to be like, they really have to both be here. Like if both people are here in this context, in this kind of a conversation, yeah, we can basically come up with kind of like rules of the game, like, hey, you know what, when conflict arises, we do this. And that really is a practice. Like I would call that a relationship practice, because without practice, good luck. Because what's going to happen, typically, if you're with the right partner, you're going to be touched in places where you go unconscious. Like there isn't that, like certainly in the dating conversation, I feel like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I think this and you think that. That's cool. And do you remember? Have you heard about this book, Mike, called "Mating in Captivity"?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
I have not read it either, but I've heard like a synopsis of it, and the idea really deeply kind of sparked sparked in me in this way. It's basically saying that in the beginning of a relationship, there is so much freedom and so little at stake because, well, oh, okay, you don't like me, okay, you slam the door on me, okay, well, there's no sunk cost, right? But as we continue with every day, every year, every experience that we share together, typically in a romantic relationship, like a relationship that is about like intimacy, not necessarily maybe relationship within family ties, but when you're dating somebody, when you're growing with somebody, when you want to build a life with somebody, every bit that you move forward in the path makes it that much more seemingly at stake, because now you have sunk cost in terms of time, money, your energy, like for some people, age is a thing. It's like, oh, now I'm this, I should have been here. And so you have all of this, and this creates a pressure. And what does that pressure do? It's obvious what it does. It creates inauthenticity. because it's like, now that so much is at stake, should I really tell you how I feel? Can I? And what's going to happen to me or to you or to us? So this kind of context, like if we can begin to really understand that, like there are many things beyond just how good of a conflict navigator I am and you are. It's like we are really entering into almost like a pressure cooker. It's like a setup, and it's set up for something. And some people say, oh, like if you really think about it, like we've hear so many of these kind of like things about like, oh, marriage is like ball and chain, and it's like, oh yeah, you're about to go and like, commit yourself to something. So, and then we have these stag parties, we have these like, like your last freedom party, and this is completely absurd, right? Like, but still, even within that context, we are still magnetically drawn to keep going into this journey. But the core of this journey is that it will bring forth conflict, and that conflict is good. And the more consciousness that we both can bring, which would be amazing, but sometimes only one of us is available. So I want to also turn the conversation to like, what if your partner, like your partner may literally just not get you on some particular subject. Like for you, it may be something like so important and she just doesn't see it, or he doesn't see it. What do you do then? Like, certainly you can say, oh, you know what, I'm done with this one. But apart from that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a conflict that would put me in a place where I'm stand so strong in my belief that it would make me want to justify something. Is there something that you can think of recently where you had a conflict that was just like you were just lost in the story? And you let me just go ahead.
Yeah, I can share. Like, I had one experience recently where it's like, and this is probably a really good one. I asked my partner, like, at first, though, like something was off. Okay, like, I would feel some turmoil, and she could see it, right? And there was some disconnect. And then so she asked me, like, "Hey, what is up? Can you like share with me?" And I'm like, it just doesn't feel like the right time to share. Like, it doesn't feel like this is the best thing to do right now. I said, "No, please share with me." I'm like, I do want to share, but I feel like it's not the right time. Like, I feel like it may lead to more conflict, and we may not be well resourced right now. And it was like, okay, well, but please, just share. I feel, and I'm like, okay, can you really hold this for me? Can you really hold the space? Yes, I can. The person, my wife says, like, yes, I can. And I know that she means it. It's not like this is a setup, consciously. But as soon as I then open that space and I share, she gets triggered, right? I now, like, I feel like I was vulnerable. I share into this space, and boom, it like something for her. And then, of course, now that she feels hurt, something else is coming back at me, and now I feel this incredible betrayal. I'm like, wow, I asked you to hold this space. I'm sharing into the space, and now it kind of turns on me. I felt like, and yeah, I think it's still kind of like an opinion and a position. I felt like I can't believe that I'm betrayed like this. How can I ever trust here? One example.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that is a very vulnerable thing for you to share and then feel like you're betrayed. It doesn't really answer my story of like, what story are you? Because typically in conflict, you're holding on to a story, and therefore you have a viewpoint or a belief that you're trying to defend. So in that situation, sorry,
right?
Say that again.
The story is that I was betrayed. The story is that I'm not safe.
Okay. And okay. So is that something hard for you to recognize when you're in the moment, I guess?
Absolutely. I mean, in that moment, that felt like very real and factual. And I had all of the proof that that's what's happening.
I read something that before we started airing, which is like all conflict starts from the need to feel justification. And what justification means is that essentially that I am blameless for this experience. I am not the one to be blamed for this conflict. So we hold this justification, and that keeps us stuck keeps us like super stuck. So even though it might feel good to like justify something and use your ego to kind of push back a little bit because you feel like attacked or whatever it is or not safe, we all know it does not feel good overall. It's like in the moment, it's like, I justify this, but you know, it's like the conflict still exists. So it keeps us feeling overall not very good. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So we are working opposite to ourselves. So this is kind of like bringing it back to like you, I, what can really I do in that moment, right? Like the truth, even in that moment, was that, my partner loves me. Yes, she said she can hold space, but then she got triggered. So what? Like just because she said that I can hold space doesn't mean she becomes like immutable, right? And
mm,
so this is the thing also, like, about any kind of expectation, even if it's a righteous expectation that it's okay, like it makes sense, it's still gonna be failed at some point, and that leaves you back right where you always are, as one, as just this of you is all, just it's up to you. And in that moment, apart from the realization of truth, the realization of God, I don't see really any other way to supersede it, because if we're in the context of like, I am just an ego, I am just this Boris, this person, and I'm trying to do my best here, I'm going to learn some techniques, but it's really all up to me, that you will always fail, because it is a false you. It is an avatar, it's a persona, it is not the whole of what you are, and it is something that you actually constructed from many of the things that you saw in life, that you heard, that you understood, that were enforced on you, imprinted on you, and ones that you chose. So that part is really, in my sense, it's like it's not capable of the handling the allness that life is going to throw at you, right?
mhm.
Okay, where does that leave us, right? And I'll share just from my own personal experience. It is, if we open to the context that what is really happening here is that we have never left love, that we are actually right here in the midst of that which we call omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. We are here in the midst of the infinite one. And this, while this is a kind of maybe a stretch for some people, when any of us can really connect with this, because if we really just take a look out in nature and we see like how exquisite the pattern is that just like interlocks anything, even our own body, like the fact that it's all built up so magnificently, and it's not made with hands, it's made in a way that we can never make something like this, and it's like that for all of nature. So we got to say to this, is there some intelligence behind the way that the bees and the pollen and the flower and the entire agriculture all are interconnected, and then that is interconnected with all the animal kingdoms, the mineral kingdoms, how the sun it's just the most perfect puzzle. And something in us can usually yield to the fact that there is an intelligence greater than I, because I don't know how to create this, I don't know how to create this, so there must be something more. And if we can open to this more, then we realize that this more, we never need to ask for anything. We never need to worry for anything, because like this intelligence, the infinite intelligence, is already present. It already is aware of everything that there is to be aware of. And if it is allowing life to unfold, then there must be some kind of a rightness to it. There must be some kind of a safety. And what I would say, and I guess the whole reason I'm speaking about this is safety. And I think safety is really the key word here. It's like the moment that you feel unconditionally safe is the moment that there's absolutely nothing that your partner can do or say that is unresolvable. It's as if we're playing like a video game, and yeah, okay, you got killed, but I know that you're not dead. I know that you'll respawn, right? And it's essentially that. And like for me, I find that in God. I find that in the realization of the immanent presence of divine intelligence and power, and that there is no power actually in this conflict, or in that word, or even in that sense of like, oh man, I'm betrayed. Betrayed by what? God? No. And if it's not by God, then how can I really be betrayed? So if we can find this or some other form to come to this realization of I am literally safe here. I can speak to you about anything. You can disagree with me, you can be upset, but that's okay. And I think the moment that we have that, then we really have brought something to the relationship, to that conflict that nobody can take away. Nothing can take it away if you realize that ultimately right now I'm safe no matter what happens.
Yeah, and that definitely has to be like an inward kind of experience, not necessarily in the outwards, but some ways that we can create that safety. And I think it's very important. It's a very important one to create safety in the relationship so that you can resolve the conflict. And three quote unquote rules that I heard were in order to create a safe space, and you can see if this resonates. One, we're not going to call each other names. I know that when I get in like heated conversations in the past, it's very easy to call the other person a name just out of like reaction or whatever. Two, we're not going to raise our voices. I think that's also very important because you build up the energy and it just goes into passion or anger or whatever it is. Three, this is an interesting one. I heard we're going to keep this conversation confidential. And when I heard this one, I was like, that's interesting. That wouldn't have really resonated with me. But why is that? Well, it's probably because you sometimes when you're in an argument, you feel like it's going to leak out to your friends, your family, or something like that. But you really want to, I guess, keep that intimate and allow that person to share vulnerably whatever they want to share without being used against them or something like that. So I thought those three were interesting to create a quote unquote safe space. But like you were saying in your example, which is why I find your example so good, it's like you wanted that. You wanted to be vulnerable. You told her that you were going to share vulnerably, yet you still felt the betrayal. So the safe environment is nothing if you don't have that inner belief in safety. So
it's so beautiful. Yeah, I want to really like commend you for sharing those pillars. Yeah, that's a co-creation. And co-creations are so magnificent. They can be the most artful things. I am almost certain that there will be moments when that co-creation is going to be tested. Just like in me, like we have the best intentions. Here we are together. We're true. We are aware of this. We love each other. And yet it just comes in, the matrix comes in, and it's like, boom, something crosses your eyes, and it's gone. And now you're back into your own seat of consciousness, and now you have your own choice. So the safety needs to be, I think it's so beautiful to create it in relationship, but it also needs to be created inside. And we're talking about safety, like we've talked about this in the past, right? It's like our fear is not really warranted. Like, so what that she doesn't agree with me? So what that she got upset that I shared something in the safe space? Like, there's no skin off my back. I don't have any battle scars from that. It's literally a psychological experience. So if we can really just sit with this, like in meditation, like take a recent conflict and look at it from like this, as if there was a camera in the room, and just see, oh, okay, yeah, so there's two people, they sit on the couch. Sometimes my wife and I would talk about this, like we're just literally just sitting on the couch and something arises that just seems so important and so much gravity to it, so much seriousness. This is another keyword. Safety is a keyword, and seriousness is another really big keyword, because when we get serious in our mind, not sincere. Sincere is that vulnerability. Sincere is like, I don't know, like, but seriousness is like, this has to be some kind of way. I know it has to be this way. That acts as a very strong poison to any kind of resolution, connection, anything. So humor is that antidote to that poison. And by imagining that there's a camera looking at you, like it's the funniest thing, it's like two people sitting on the couch and suddenly they're like, and they're up in arms. If we see animals do this, we think, oh, this is funny, but like when we are doing it from this point of view, it's the most serious thing. So developing this appreciation for this cosmic joke of what's happening, and also cultivating this sense of like safety. Like, yeah, I am safe, even though my body's reacting like there's a tiger in here. Look, there's no tiger, right? And we've kind of gone over this when we spoke about anxiety, but this is I feel like the possibly for me, the two keys for resolving conflict are humor and a sense of humor, not making fun of the person, but a sense of humor for the situation, and that sense of safety developed and cultivated inside, and of course offered to the relationship. The structures, those are all beautiful, but they will not be there in when you're all alone. And so to find that in you, I feel that that's what makes us like the one that makes us like Neo, to be able to walk through emotional conflict and just be like, that's so sweet. And then that face, it appears as this like big monster, and you're like, I know you're not this big monster. That's so cute of you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much of our like anxiety or whatever of conflict resides in the mind. Another way you can resolve conflict, and this works with some people, not necessarily others, is just touch. Is just like letting them know that the body's okay. Like this was something a lady shared with me recently that I thought was amazing. It's like all she needs in conflict is just touch. It's like that's her heal. That's her sense that you care about her. She knows that she's safe. So such an easy one, right? That also kind of leads towards. I just had a thought as you were speaking. In the tantric philosophy, they have something known as like the 36 tattvas. What that is basically is like it explains the way that consciousness moves from one thing, aka like God, into its separate infinite beings of conflict and separation and all that stuff. So there's 36 levels. One of those levels is sound or language. And so I just had a thought, like, I wonder if we removed language, how much conflict would reside. And then it got me thinking, like, okay, out in nature, animals aren't really, or at least we don't know if they're talking. Maybe they are arguing. There's probably a good chance that they are arguing. But say we were all mute, like, what would we really argue about? Because there would be like no mental things. There would be like maybe somebody does something like in a kitchen and you're like, huh? But you would go up to them and there'd be like a much more like gentle, I would assume, like way to show it. But I could be completely wrong. I just know that one of those matrices into the separation of humanity is sound and language. So
That's right. Like one thing that my wife and I discovered was that all of conflict really arises from misunderstanding and miscommunication, which is sound. Yeah. So that's the core of it. Whether that's sound in our mind, which, silent sound, so to speak, or we're communicating something, it just gets lost. And we can really come back to this, like if we have this context, and if not, you and I can maybe have another conversation about this. But the conversation about the core of each and every person in existence is love and innocence. Like that is what is here, and it gets lost in translation. It gets lost in misinterpretation. And so what we're seeing is not what is actual. We are seeing this like garbled version of it, and then we don't like it. I want to also offer here, like Dr. Hawkins. Some of our listeners might know about this. He wrote Power versus Force and many other books. So he offered this perspective. And again, I don't know if it's true, but it seems to me like it makes a lot of sense. He says that the ego is essentially an editing mechanism. It is not at this like razor's edge of this moment, but it comes in, and he has his own calculation, which is like some 54,000 microseconds or milliseconds, like right at like post this. And so perception is happening and it's coming to us. Let's call it pure perception. And then it enters into our ego mechanism. And in that split second, 1/1000th of a second or whatever it is, it basically is reinterpreted. And we hear it through this reinterpretation. It's almost like we have an AI that's translating for us. And I think that this is also something, of course, is going to be emerging in the world if it's not already, like to speak different languages. But imagine that AI is not there to be accurate. That is not its prime objective. Its prime objective is to be right. Its prime objective is that like whatever is unfolding is always going to cast you as the innocent one, and the problem is always out there. what a crazy translator that would be. You know, like somebody saying something to you and that you hear something that you get upset about. I really feel that that is all that's happening. And if we can apply this sense of like, but I'm really safe, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what this translation says, we can always try again. Let's try again, you know? And also to have the humor to really face that, look, like here we're trying to communicate, we're trying to connect in love, and instead we are in hellfire. Can this really be real? Or is this just like, you know, is this just this illusion?
Beautiful. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of it. Is there anything else that you can think would help benefit the audience in terms of conflict? I know it's been a while since I've been in like a crazy heated conflict moment, so I can't really offer anything in that regards. um,
In the conflict, like to be resourceful in conflict, we really have to just come back to ourselves. Like my go-to in life is let's check what's happening against the truth. Now, the truth is we are sitting having a conversation. The truth is you don't agree with what I said or with what I would like to do. That is allowed in my world. It's almost like this. I want to maybe bring one other dimension. We talked about safety, humor, and perhaps that last dimension that we can really kind of create a pillar around here is it's allowance. Allowance when
Actually,
they call
this
it
tapped into the question that I wanted to ask. I put it phrased like this: what are you willing to tolerate in a relationship? Because we all know we get into relationships and there is going to be conflict. So having that preset mind, like, what are you willing to tolerate? Are you willing to tolerate a difference in viewpoint? Most of us would probably say yes. But when it comes to the actual difference in viewpoint, it's like, nah, hell no.
Exactly. We have different, it's okay to have boundaries, but it's like if you're just using those boundaries to make sure that your like wounds never get touched or poked, then you will find that those boundaries don't work. You will find that your partners don't respect them, etc. Because there's something beyond just our two egos interacting here. This is my very firm kind of experience, you know? It's like there is a quality of intelligence that is moving us in such a way. I've seen it so many times, such crazy things. Like the person could say anything at all, and they say just that word that like ripples through and like, you know, how could that be out of all of the possible combinations? It's that, and it's here, and it's facing me. So, like that space of allowance or tolerance kind of means like, oh, I don't like it, and you know. But it's like, what if we go beyond that? What if we just like say, you are allowed to make any sound with your mouth that you would like to. My ears, you are allowed to hear anything, and that's okay. And then also about emotions, it's like this anger, this frustration, this sense of discomfort, it is allowed to be here in my body. Because again, you know, like the more consciousness we bring to it, the funnier it becomes. Because this thing, it like arises and passes away. It's here for a moment, but the more you focus on it, the longer it's there, and it becomes this self-fulfilling, you know, reality. But in essence of it, the more we give permission to everything around us and within us to be as it is, the more it just becomes like, well, okay, you know, like when we don't have this urge, this need to change something so that it's okay, it actually unfolds in a way that's okay and okay and okay the moment that it comes, you know, okay from us to begin with. So I think I would want to just kind of like summarize it like this is like we have just emerged, you know, spontaneously in this conversation. We have safety, we have this allowance, we have humor, and they all feed into each other. You know, if it's something humorous, you know, it's safe. You know, if you allow, if it's something allowed, with permission, you also get a sense of safety. You know, and so we can begin to use these signatures. It's like they're like energetic signatures. They're like postures in a way. You know, we don't think about it so much, but these are postures that can be practiced in consciousness. And so as you approach the day, I would even say, you can say, okay, this day I'm going to be met with challenge. There will be things in this day that I may not like, I may be triggered by, I may not necessarily accept outright, but I know how I'm going to meet them. I'm going to meet them by affirming that I am really safe. nothing here. If I'm running away from a car chasing me, trying to run me down, or a tiger or something, I get that. That's not a conflict. That is survival issue. But, I know that I'm going to be safe. I know that I can right now give permission to everything that arises in my day and know that I have the wherewithal to meet it. And I can bring this sense of humor, knowing that how crazy it is that we react to each other in these crazy ways. In the middle of a conversation with someone that is the closest and dearest person to us, we start calling them bitch. We start, blah, blah, blah. And so, there's an illumination when we look at that and we say, oh, there's a way to find humor in this. And then, and then you open up into your day and you try to hold those postures, try to re-embody them, re-breathe them into the moment. And the moment that there's some conflict, and you'll feel it instantly in your body, something starts to go from flow to contraction or freeze. You can start to reanimate them. You don't have to say them out loud, but inside of you, safety, acceptance. Yeah, you can be whatever you want. You can have any opinion. Sometimes my wife approaches me and she's like, I want to tell you something. And a part of me goes on alert. It's like, but I speak to that part and I say, she can say absolutely anything and I'm going to still love you. Okay. So to breathe those into those moments, it's magic, and you're going to be well resourced. You're going to find them as allies, and they'll speak to you. They'll say, they'll say things like, they'll remind you of how humorous it is. They'll say, give her permission. They'll say, you're already safe. You don't need to change her to be okay. So I think that's what I'd like to maybe leave us and offer us here.
That's beautiful. And yeah, it's all about your identity, right? So we have to become friends with conflict rather than seeing conflict as this hurtful thing that damages us, that causes us to shy away from people or whatever it is. So your new identity should be that I absolutely thrive in conflict. I love conflict. It makes me grow so strong, and it's my best friend. In fact, when I asked a couch surfer recently what their thoughts on a successful life looks like, they answered overcoming challenges or conflict. So I think if you can see that, that's a very successful life. I do want to end with this because I feel like this would resonate a lot with the audience. This is something that you mentioned in one of our previous episodes. I think it was the spiritual relationship advice podcast. You had mentioned an analogy that has to do with gold. Maybe you can just end with that, like boiling off the impurities, and what is causing all this conflict is really love, essentially. So maybe you can share that.
Yeah. Imagine that we are all here as soul journey beings, as truly infinite beings with choice, with wisdom, with experience. We come here by choice. But we come here, why? If we really look around all of the spiritual teachings, we always see love reflected. Somehow, in one way or another, we may say that we come here for love. We may say that we come here to discover the unconditionality of love, when we come here to discover the love that we truly are. So what would such a being do here on earth? If they've come here to this uncover love, to know love in its fullest, wouldn't they be looking at all of the places where love is missing? Because they know that they are infinite. So it's like any place in me where I appear to be less than love, unlove, this is the place to look. So the sense is that the more and more we engage love, the more these other places where we're still not willing to love ourselves, or where we're kind of rejecting, judging, etc. And not only ourselves, we also do this to others, but this is a very direct reflection. So with the moment that we have something outside of us that we judge, that we reject, that we feel is not lovable, there is some corollary inside, because there's a place right there in relationship to that where no love. So what's happening is that these places become more and more clear, more and more contrasted, more and more obvious, more and more, and it seems like all of a sudden you're peppered with these unlovely experiences, especially in a love-based relationship, in a relationship that's committed to love, growth, spirituality, truth. And so the analogy that I shared last time was just when we want to get pure gold, or we want to get whatever, pure platinum or anything, when we're purifying things, we are essentially boiling off the impurities. We raise it to a certain level where the substance itself is going to be maintained, but things like carbon and different things are going to be burned off. And so there we have the pure gold. So it's the same thing in love. It's like the relationship, any relationship, your intimate relationship or whatever it may be, it provides you the same heat, the same opportunity, the same boiling point, and you're going to see all of the unlove come to the surface, and it's going to stink, and it's going to bubble, and it's going to like splatter. And this is where we should get excited. We should be able to bring our awareness to this and say, well, this is amazing. This is what I came for. I am right now being purified. I am right now upgrading. This relationship right now is being purified. This relationship is upgrading. We're going to a new level together. And so if we can just have a little bit of a pilot light somewhere in the back of our consciousness that is maintaining this, oh, how beautiful it is. And we see this all for us, not against us.
Beautiful. That's a great way to end. I absolutely love that analogy of imagining like you're an alien coming down and you are pure love, which you are. If you've forgotten, that's okay. That's why we have this podcast. And your job is only to bring more love. And so, yeah, you would look for the places of unlove. I love that analogy. It's amazing. All right, audience. I hopefully you like that. Another powerful session. And any last words? We're good.
Yeah, no, we're awesome. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's such a joy. Also, I want to thank you, Mike. It's such a joy also to hang out with you and explore these concepts. I find so much like wisdom comes from just us coming together and exploring what is the truth about, you know, all of these different subjects.
Awesome. Until next time, guys. God bless. We will see you next week. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.